your girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time. Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And real quick housekeeping note, if you are watching us on YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you are listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, Google, any of the podcast platforms, please hit that follow and subscribe button so we can continue to bring you conversations like the one I'm about to have right now with Mr. Michael DeBar. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing really well, and it's lovely to be with you, Mr. Boondoggle.
And yeah, so like as I was saying to you before we went on, you know, I before I went on my trip, I did a little, you know, went down the rabbit hole, and I still couldn't have finished in time before I left for my trip. But wow, you've lived quite an amazing life.
There's been a lot of rabbits. Of rabbits.
Definitely. But usually when I have somebody on for the first time, I like to go way back. So do you remember originally, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a pirate. This is the 18th century. So I wanted to be Jack Sparrow before Jack Sparrow was Jack Sparrow. I don't know. How long have I been at it? Well, I've been, an actor since I was a preteen, you know. I did all those commercials and BBC television shows. And then I did Just So With Love when I was 16. I'm now 75. I've made 152 albums and had 7 wives. And, you know, I mean, I don't even know where to begin myself. You know, there's a lot of chapters in that book for sure.
Oh, definitely. And like, as I was like, you know, kind of, you know, the documentary definitely helped give me a background and everything. But so, yeah, you discovered music at a very early age. Like, who were some of the early influences that kind of guided you towards you knowing that you wanted to do some music yourself?
Keith's hair.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, come on, stay with me. Keith Richards' hair, yeah. It's a question I've been asked 1,000 times, and the answer is the blues. You know, Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Robert Johnson, and all of the great blues players turned me on when I was very, very young, because what happened to me was I didn't have a mother or father. I didn't know them, you know. My father was in jail for embezzlement. My mom was unfortunately in a psychological state, and she wasn't around. So I was in these boarding schools. So what did I have to do? It was an incredible vibe, because you have all of these kids, these young boys who came from wealthy families. Now, my father was a marquis, clearly. He was wealthy until he embezzled everything. And I was stuck in this school, and I stayed there in the holidays when everybody else went to their homes. So I read a lot and listened a lot to music. I read a lot of books. The library was incredible. And the music that I went to was the music that was going to the Yardbirds and the Stones and John Mayall and Alexis Korn and all the great Brit blues players. And I thought, oh my God, you know, this is such a feeling, a sensual, bluesy, loving vibe, you know, hatred too, very spiritual. And I really meditated and listened to that music. It became my mantra. So when I left at 16 and I came to London in 1960, whatever it was, mid 60s, London was this palace, this castle, this wonderland of rock and roll. And I knew I wanted to act, which I did as a kid, but what I really wanted to do was adopt the character of a rock and roll musician. And I mean that. I adopted the character. I didn't really feel like a singer. I just wanted to be in rock and roll. That came later. But my dream was to stand there with a microphone to a bunch of people who loved rock and roll music. And essentially that first album, the Silverhead album, is a blues album, in my view. We got stamped as being glam because I had high cheekbones. You know what I mean? It was bullshit. Glam my ass. Yeah, I've got a glamorous ass. But the vibe is, that's just, NME bullshit, and God, Nick Kent, who was the great writer of the time, didn't describe us as that. We were just a bunch of boisterous teenagers playing, rock and roll music. And we didn't give a damn about whether the place was packed or not packed. Thankfully it was packed because the word got around real quick, But the word got around real quick and the drugs got around real quick, if you want to go into that chapter.
Yeah, I do want to get into that, but back to the acting thing too. How did how were you approached, or how were you able to do childhood acting when you were at the school? How did that come about?
Because the drama school was run by a brilliant woman, an actress and a great teacher, but her sister was an agent. So I got there and, and I had a particular look and she put me out for stuff and I got it. I played the bad boy throwing the brick through the window, a punk, if you wish. This is in the 60s before Rotten was born, probably. But the vibe here is that the agency would send me on these auditions and I'd get them. And I'd also go to these auditions with David Bowie and Mark Bolan. They were young actor models. David was in a mime company led by Lindsay Kemp, and this is way before they became huge, But Bowie always had this, and Bolan. I mean, these two together, I will never forget being in their presence. They really had a presence, and they got the gigs too. But it was a modeling vibe too for the three of us, and many others. Good-looking Brit boys, and girls. It was all the rage, the fabulous 60s, and then they did their thing, and I got into Silverhead, and the rest is sort of Paisley.
And then as before you got into Silverhead and you were involved in, I mean, you got to check out, what was the music scene in England like before Silverhead came about for you?
Unbelievable. Every night, Georgie Fame, the Yardbirds, Alexis Corner, John Mayall, so many blues bands. And bands that were becoming, like Ronnie Wood had a band, all of these different bands started to appear, and they were all, seduced by soul music and blues music. And of course, the Beatles had the most massive effect on the world in terms of pop, the Hollies and so on, the Searchers and all of that, with Liverpudlian. And the Beatles are very difficult to describe in my life because it's way beyond, great songs. It's another season, the summer, winter, spring Beatles. It's that's not the thing. What I liked was the bluesy sensuality of those clubs because of the sexiness and the decadence that came with them.
Yeah, that's definitely, especially a young male hitting puberty. There's an attraction to being a part of that scene.
No, I'm still hitting puberty, for goodness sake. It doesn't hurt so much now,
I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you because I feel we're kindred spirits in that regards after watching your documentary. But so let's get to forming Silverhead. Your first song written seems like the perfect title for every aspiring musician. Will you finance my rock and roll band?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened. Well, it's very interesting because, I did To Sell With Love, in 66, and it came out and it was really popular. And I got this nude musical in London called The Dirtiest Show in Town, where we were naked in this thing. I used to go through Soho and go through all the strip clubs, and they were getting 10 times the money I was getting, on the West End. Anyway, I digress. Andrew Lloyd Webber came to see the musical. I sang in it. He liked what he heard. He had me do demos for Jesus Christ Superstar, as did Ian Gillan from Deep Purple, who he knew very well. And therefore, he said, you should be in a rock and roll band. So he took me to Purple Records, Ian Gillan's, band, Deep Purple. And it all went from there. Within weeks, we, did auditions, for skinny rock stars. And they came in, and it just happened so fast. Within a month, we were recording.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible. And then, so Silverhead gets formed. And then when did the move to LA happen?
First album, 72, off to the US. We started in Japan. We went to Japan, which was fantastic because, they'd adored, because we had whiteface and, it was very sort of kabuki, stuff, Japanese mime. And then they were hit with us, in velvet and eyeliner and rocking, and they loved it. And we had these big audiences. Then we come to the States. In LA, it was spectacular. Everywhere else in the country, we had to earn an audience. We had to play and dig them. And then the second time around, we played Chicago, was, more people and, the usual route that you take. But Los Angeles, we came to, and of course fell in love with it. And I fell in love with Miss Pamela at that time, who wrote on With the Band and so on. Some of you people out there might have heard of her and even read her books, which are absolutely exquisite and very clever. And that was it. Whiskey a Go-Go, rock and roll. Amazing, living the dream of what I was dreaming about when I was in these boarding schools for 2 years. Drugs came in, and that changed a lot.
Yes, and then you had gotten had a relationship with Jimmy Page and got signed to his. Your band got signed by his label, or.
Yeah, that's a long time after Silverhead, though. Silverhead went on for a couple of years, and then I came to LA. I stayed in LA. Jimmy was in town with the band, and I got into this situation with Detective, which was Michael Murdoc, Bobby Pickett, and John Hyde, very Zeppelin-esque, big, hard rock and roll. And Jimmy loved Silverhead, and we got signed. Then we were part of our deal was for Jimmy to produce the record. But what happened was Jimmy was, shall we say, in another state of mind, and Robert's son, dreadfully died. And there was a darkness that came over Zeppelin at that time, and a darkness that came over us because we had to wait a year for the whole thing, for Jimmy to get to it with us. And even that didn't happen. So therefore one became addicted to the obvious, and the obvious was cocaine and heroin and anything I could get my hands on. And that is not cool. We did do 2 albums, which I think are pretty rocking, on a kind of a big rock and roll level. But Jimmy and Zeppelin obviously were then, shall we say, then Bonzo passed away, and that whole world sort of fell, really. And we fell with it. But the real lesson learned here was get sober, quit drugs as soon as you can, and I did. And that was in 1981, maybe. And I've been, clean and sober, I suppose. I don't know about clean, but I've been sober for 42 years, man, and I highly, highly recommend it to anybody out there who's in pain.
Yeah. And that was the other thing that we have in common. I just back in March 1st, I celebrated 14 years of sobriety myself.
Fantastic.
Well so done. It's like I was feeling a lot of connections watching your documentary, and
You guys can watch this documentary, by the way, on Amazon Prime. It's there right now for you. It was the #1 rockumentary of 2020. So check it out. I think you'll like it. And this is not an egoic thing at all. It's a story that is actually a good story, a lovely story, a story that ended well. Not well, actually, not well, but lovingly. How's that?
No, I agree. And yeah, that's where I watched it, on Amazon Prime. And what was the title again?
Who do you want me to be?
Yes.
That was the title of this, and that's a very apt title because I played all these rock and rolls, as it were, over the years, over the many, many years that I've been in show business since 1966. And I don't even know what year it is now. What is it? 2023. That's an awfully long time. And I learned so much about myself, getting sober, sure, but also working with people that are extraordinary. And the last mentor that I had and have to this day is Stevie Van Zandt, who has been so good to me. Doing my radio program on Sirius XM channel 21 every day for 9 years. And that's been incredible because what happened to me was it's not my music. I'm extolling the virtues of other people's music. And that is really a wonderful place to be. I've been, put out records with Stevie's label. But nevertheless, what's lovely is over the years, I've developed a real understanding and knowledge of the music that we play in Little Steven's Underground Garage.
Yeah. And I wanted to jump back real quick because,
Sure.
We were just talking about, when you got sober and how things started changing for you then. And I remember as a kid watching MTV, and this was just when I was getting ready to get it into my addiction and run wild for a little bit. But you were a co-founder for the R.A.D campaign, the Rock Against Drugs. Yeah, I remember seeing those commercials on MTV after watching like Headbangers Ball and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know, those rock stars look like they're having fun. So of course I had to, dip my toe into the addiction part. But that was a really cool campaign that you guys were part of. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Rock Against Drugs, great. Jonesy, Ozzy, although I think Ozzy arrived at the filming of the thing stoned, but that's another matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, if he was, kids saw him and he wasn't, The most important thing to realize is that at the time it was like persona non grata, as they say in Latin, to do something like that. I mean, it's not cool because, Vince Neil is falling off stage and so on and so forth. It's that world of the 80s metal that was all about debauchery and drugs. For me, it wasn't. It was about the power station, for one thing, but and heavy writing obsession, all these wonderful things that happened to me in the 80s. But drugs were not cool. And my manager at the time, Danny Goldberg, who has been president of innumerable record labels, and my dearest friend, Danny Goldberg, we put it together. And we went to Washington with it, and they gave us the money, is what happened. Rock Against Drugs. Yeah, good. Okay, let's do that. Let's try and get the kids off. It's all Reagan and all of that bollocks, But so that happened. And that was a twofold thing. One, it wasn't hip. Can you imagine a world which you don't take drugs, therefore you're not hip? Can you imagine anything more stupid than that? Yeah, I'm cool. I'm like Keith Richards. I'll get busted in Canada and never work again. Yeah, it's a great idea. Good. So obviously smack in the face, boom, idiot. And get yourself together, be yourself, be loving, be kind, be cool, be courageous. Don't be an asshole, and kill your family and your, all of it. And I'm talking about not death. I'm talking about life, living a life of the dead, which is what it is. So I felt very profoundly about it. And I still do, the 12 steps, you bet. And you do too, which is interesting, but I didn't get like any kind of like accolades on a rock and roll level, quite the opposite.
Yeah. But I mean, you were being of service, which is part of what our, you were trying to share the message as we're called to do, in a new way. And it might not have, gotten the response you were hoping back then, but I remember it and, seeds were planted. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, as the years went by, of course, then my status as a saint grew. I mean, and I looked at it with a comedic vibe. I mean, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. There's nothing I can do about it. I can only say it made my life better. That's all.
Yeah.
And look at what happened to me. I wrote this thing with Holy Night Obsession, and it was #1 all over the world, and I could just live off that, for the rest of my life. I mean. And then the power station happened, and that was insane and fantastic. And then I played Murdoc on MacGyver. The 80s were very, very, very cool.
Yeah, I was going to say like that. So this was all around the time as you were sober that all these other doors opened up. It was like a new life, a new opportunity to pursue what you had. But real quick, wanted to go back because you had mentioned doing the Rock Against Drugs with Steve Jones, but you'd also at one point were in Checkered, the band Checkered with Steve.
Yeah, Checkered Past.
Checkered Past. Yeah, Checkered Past.
It was Clem Burke and Nigel from Blondie. Nigel Harrison was, of course, in Silverhead also, and Tony Sales. Hunt Sales' brother was in Tin Machine with David Bowie, I mean, it was an amazing bunch. Clem, Steve Jones, the greatest guitar player ever, in my view, and still is, and my dearest friend. And we had this band Checkered Past. There's been so many chapters to it. It's all one big jigsaw to me, but I do remember that Clem Burke is probably the greatest drummer in rock and roll. And Steve Jones is one of the greatest guitar players in rock and roll. And that band live was ridiculous. I mean, it was so loud, so powerful, really rock. An album, but live, tremendous fun. And Steve Jones is an exquisite example of how to live your life when coming from a working class life where you can't read or write into being this beautiful man who really, really cares about what goes on in the world. And of course, his TV series was spectacular based on his book, Lonely Boy.
And so that's when you guys first formed your relationship, though, getting together for that band. And then, he's had his ups and downs as you guys got into R.A.D, but your friendship obviously has grown through the years, and he's made a positive impact, as you were saying as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you enjoy the ups if you don't have the downs. You learn from the downs, and the ups come in, if you're smart about it. And that is to see the world in a clean and clear way, and not pretend to be something, but be someone, and be kind to yourself. And you learn that over the years. And some people know it naturally. But at that time, and the 60s was such a place to fall into the universe, at that time, because rock and roll and debauchery was just everywhere you looked. And who am I to avoid debauchery? Michael Debauchery, hello. I mean, for good heavens. So, but Jonesy, fantastic man, unbelievable guitar player. And he still does it on Instagram. And if you watch Steve Jones on Instagram, you'll see what I'm talking about. This beautiful guy comes on with an acoustic and blows your mind.
Amazing. Yeah. And like you were saying, we can't appreciate the ups without going through the downs. And, some people experience it naturally, but others like myself, I'm still learning and growing. I've been sober 14 years, but I'm still trying to learn how to love myself. So that way I can truly love others and give back. And that's kind of like why I got into this podcast. I served in the military, and,
really?
So it's like I struggle with, thank you. And I struggle with a lot of, insecurities and, PTSD, anxiety. And this is part of my healing and therapy.
Beautiful.
To talk to other people and also share the message about, I'm always open about being in recovery myself,
Yeah. For me, the phrase that you almost use, what I abide by is love yourself enough to be loved.
Yes.
That's a very important phrase for anyone to sort of occupy, because it's so important that you care about yourself enough to be loved. then that will happen. You will have relationships that mean something, that actually is truthful. And that's all I'm looking for, is the truth, especially if one is going to get married or one is going to work with musicians, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a sexual relationship. I have that vibe when I get musicians around, when I want to record. It's a vibe. It creates an energy of positivity, and therefore the music is beautiful. It's better because you love yourself enough to be loved. The other musicians love you. It's as simple as that. It's as difficult to understand as that too, of course. Yeah. But at the same time, you're on the right level, man. You love yourself enough to be loved, and everything will be all right.
And like this past year, I've definitely grown in that regards of loving myself and my self-worth coming up. And it's opened so many doors. Like, I never thought I'd have this opportunity to be speaking with you right now, but you put out good stuff, and our higher power provides,
Yeah, I mean, I don't often do Zooms, and there's but every now and then I will, and you popped in, and it's got nothing to do with being on 60 Minutes, maybe 69 minutes, I would do. But 60, it's not about that. It's about the magic. It's magic. It's all magic. It's all magic.
Amen. And then you had touched on it too about your time in Power Station, that you replaced Robert Palmer, and that how did that opportunity come out? And your first gig was that major festival.
Live Aid, it was called, yeah.
Live Aid, yeah.
2 billion people. But in terms of replacing Robert Palmer, nobody could replace Robert Palmer. Robert Palmer I'd known 10 years before joining the Power Station, because he was the Marvin Gaye of the clubs. He was just an incredible, and his work still, even though he's passed away, still is so powerful and potent and soulful. I got lucky, man. I just had Obsession, and that was huge. And I'm on location with Don Johnson, a dear friend, for 100 years. And he was making a movie, and I got a phone call from Wayne Forte in New York saying, listen, what are you doing this summer? I said, I'll be enjoying my number one hit. What are you doing? And he says, well, we have this gig, this tour with the Power Station, John and Andy Taylor and Tony Thompson. Tony Thompson I've adored since Chic. I knew how great he was. And being in, I think we were in Atlanta or something, but I flew to New York to meet with John and Tony, which I did. And then we went to the Power Station studio, and we took the album. I got on the Concorde the next morning and went to London and sat in a studio for 8 hours waiting for Andy to come. With 2 bodyguards and a pile of marijuana. And I used that time to get it on, to really get a great version of Get It On, the sound and so on. And Andy came in and billowing marijuana smoke. And I sang the first verse and chorus, and he hits the button. He says, let's go shopping.
Nice.
So we went shopping. I bought everything I could possibly buy at Vivian Westwood, got back on the plane, went to New York. Don was in New York at that time. That night we go to a Chinese restaurant to eat, and celebrate. John Taylor is a few tables along. I got a phone call before we went out to dinner from Wayne Forte saying, Michael, you're out. What? You're out. You're not in the band anymore. Robert Palmer's going to do it. So we went to dinner, and I had that on my mind, after flying around the world. This has all happened over 2 or 3 days, all of this. John Taylor over there, mildly drunk. Don Johnson goes over to him and says, come outside with me. I just want to talk real quick. It turned out that John Taylor adored Sonny Crockett, Miami Vice, all of that. And he comes back to the table. I don't ask him what was discussed. This is absolutely true, what I'm talking about. Go back to the table, go back to the hotel, miserable. Phone rings at 8 a.m. It's the guy saying, you're back in. That's
the business for you, huh?
Well, it was fantastic, man, and I go right to rehearsals. I have 3-4 days of rehearsals, and we did one show, in front of 30,000 screaming young ladies. It was interesting. It was funny because Andy over here, John here, me in the middle, and it was like the Red Sea parting, because they'd go across to John and I'd be in the middle going, hey, with this big sort of empty, thing, this empty river in front of me, because they were adoring Durrani's, But as
Red Sea.
as the gigs went on, we did live it, so that was very cool, because that went really good for me. I just felt great that day, and people seemed to enjoy it, and the rest of the tour was magnificent, and I had a wonderful time, and then I became Murdoc.
Oh, yeah. And before we go into that, I have to touch back on Obsession, because I remember Obsession because I grew up as a big WWF wrestling fan, and that was the Saturday night's main event theme music, and so it's like that song's like has so much meaning to me growing up. What a hit.
Yeah, it was all over. It's been used in so many movies. In fact, it's in a big movie now, Maxine. I was told, and by my wife, who keeps, tabs on all of this, all the stuff I've done, which is amazing. But she's amazing. But the song itself was interesting because I wrote the lyric about drugs. It wasn't about a relationship initially, and then when Holly Knight, the brilliant Holly Knight, has written so many hits herself. She appeared, and I realized, wait a minute, this should be about a relationship, I mean, an obsessive relationship, and that's what it ended up as. And I wrote it real quick, it just came to me real quick, and that's how things happened. The great things that you don't think about too much, that you feel, are the ones that really matter.
But if we look back at when we were in our addiction, it was quite an obsessive relationship we had with whatever our.
No shit. Are you kidding me? Of course, you're addicted. That means you're absolutely not in control of yourself. Addiction is being owned by whatever you're addicted to. Sex, whiskey, coke, you name it, It's you don't belong to yourself anymore. And you certainly don't love yourself, because you're so needy. Oh my God, addicts, I gotta have it. You don't understand. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, too well. So, and then, you mentioned it a couple of times. Another show that I grew up loving, of course, was MacGyver. And that you were able to balance the acting and the music thing, but were there parts where it was just like, okay, I'm going to take a break from music, I'm just going to focus on acting? Or were you always involved in both?
Well, I was always involved in both. If I wasn't in a band, I was on telly, or a movie, that's what it was. I kept working. I've done, my wife worked it out. I did 150 hours of American television, and that's an awful lot of work, from Seinfeld to you name it, all of it, just incredible. That I would go, and then after a while, I just got offered gigs, and I would do that.
Yeah, I saw Seinfeld was one. Rockford Files, that was one of my dad's favorite shows.
Yeah,
I remember him watching that all the time.
I had a great time with him, James Garner. I mean, it was James. I did two of them, James Garner and what was her name? I can't remember, but a huge star from the 50s, Lauren Bacall. Lauren Bacall and James Garner. Talking to them in between shots on that series was an education, and I've always learned so much from the people I've worked with. Even when I played the gay dude on Roseanne, if Roseanne Barr married Michael Des Barres, she'd be Roseanne Des Barres. Anyway, so thank you for your snickle. But she was great too. So I mean, I've played gay guys, I've played killers, whatever it is, whatever it was about, rock stars. Yeah. But whatever it was fun, because I was
got
clean.
To play your friend Don Johnson on Miami Vice as well.
Oh yeah, I did Miami Vice. Yeah. I did we did Power Station did Miami. Don introduced us at Live Aid. Ladies and gentlemen, John Paul. I can't even remember the names of the band anymore. God bless him. John and Andy and Tony, incredible. And he said our names and we just loved him. And then John, who was a massive Miami Vice fan, said, can we do the show? And DJ said, sure, of course, yeah, come down. And we did. And then he got out on stage with us in Miami. And we sang a song together. It was really funny.
It's amazing. Yeah, another influence growing up. You know, I used
Oh,
to
yeah.
buy his outfits and everything. I think I tried smoking as a kid because Don Johnson made it look so cool. But, you know, thankfully that was something that didn't stick with me.
Good. No, he was, it was amazing because me and Miss Power, we were down on our luck just for a couple of months. We were evicted from where we lived. You know, I've been through that. It's not all been glorious, Wonderland, but most of it has. But we were down on our luck. And DJ, who had been interviewed and auditioned for 11 other series, didn't get the gig. So Miami Vice comes along and he gets it. And he goes to Miami within 2 or 3 weeks. He's Elvis. I mean, you know what happened. It was just a massive success right away. So he said, go live in my house in Santa Monica. And if that hadn't happened, I don't know what would have happened to us. I mean, I'm sure something would have come through. It always has in my life. But to go into his house and knew that he was becoming this massive star was one of the most generous things that's ever been in my life. And it was, and it sort of changed it. It gave me an idea and refreshed my belief in myself.
Yeah. And, there's just something to be said about the amazing, we can have all kinds of like material things in our lives, but what really matters is the relationships that we build with other people and those friendships and those memories,
And the relationship you have with yourself. That's where it starts, and then if that's cool, then you'll probably, really meet people that you love and marry them or not. Men, women, and everybody in between, man. There are a number of sexes and I love them all.
And then one other acting gig I wanted to bring up that I was impressed. You were actually on another show that was one of my that I enjoyed as a youth, Alf.
Oh yeah, I worked with a sock, but it was fantastic. It was great. It was really, I loved doing that. And the guy that did the voice and everything, they had to stop it so many times because I was just laughing. I mean, because it was so fun. Alf was great. WKRP was great. I mean, we had did that show, Scum of the Earth. We played like a rock and roll band, destroying everything. That was really fun. And they used Detectives music, my band Detective on Swan Song, Zeppelin's label. They used that music when we did WKRP in Cincinnati. That was a fabulous week.
Yeah, I remember that show as well because I'm actually in Cleveland, Ohio right now. And
oh, wonderful. Love it. Great.
Part of Ohio.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, I mean, you've had all these amazing experiences. You've been sober for a very long time now. What would you say life is like for you now?
How do I look?
You look great.
That's all that matters. How do I feel right now? Well, here's the point. The real important thing of your question is 2 words, right now. That's where I live. I don't live anywhere else. I don't live in the past. I'm just talking to you about it. And, so what means something to me is what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now is writing songs and playing music for people to listen to that they adore and living a life with my wife and my cats. And, I love to write. I'm writing like crazy, a book. And I love to write songs. And I love to run everywhere, which is the key to like being useful and having like some kind of energy. I'm 75. I don't feel that, but I don't know how that feels anyway. But I feel good. I'm like James Brown. I feel good.
Amen. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you said, you're living right now, and that's kind of what we get taught, in this program. It's not about, we can remember the wreckage of our past and learn from it, but we stay and we don't get anxiety over what tomorrow could bring. We got to stay in the moment, one day at a time.
Yeah. And every psychologist, every spiritual leader, says the same thing, from Eckhart Tolle to Krishnamurti and back again. It's, you live in the moment. What are you going to do? It's one of the things that I abide by is when people say, well, I hope so. I don't hope at all. It's either going to happen or it's not. If you look at the word hope, that is such an ambiguous phrase, word, because what you believe in is what's happening. You're not going to, I hope I get that job. I hope she falls out. Get at it. Whatever is happening is all that's important, And so I've always felt that word was just chaotic and chaos. I don't have hope. I have faith, man. I got faith in what's happening. I don't hope to have faith,
Yeah. And I definitely, I mean, man, you nailed it right there, because, especially if you look at the uncertainty that we just went through the past couple of years, and
we are continuing to go through that. That's the thing. It's people think, oh, it's over now. No, it isn't, because our minds and our souls are so absolutely corrupted by what happened. We're still scared, of each other, still scared of ourselves. We don't even know who we are to a great degree. And it's going to take a long time for people to really come back to, who they are. I think the lesson is really important of what happened to us. I know that during the pandemic, my wife and I didn't go anywhere. We stayed here. And it's only recently that one has gone out and with any degree of sort of like going into a crowd of people. And I still don't do that, But that mask is a very, very potent symbol of our lives.
Yeah. But like, if I didn't have, what I have with this program, to remind myself to say the Serenity Prayer daily, it's like, what do I have control over, with what was happening? That helped get me through. And then actually Zoom like this brought me so many new people in my life, because I was able, thankfully, to do Zoom meetings and choose faith over fear. Choose that there is, no matter what happens, what do I have control over? But at the same time, I got to believe that there's something better,
Well, you don't have to, you just do, you know what I mean? I mean, the thing about sobriety and all of that bollocks is that, you are what you say you are, what you feel you are, and it is a continuous thing, but you've got to let go of all of the 10 commandments and all of that, it's only, this moment is the only thing that matters, and I do believe in going back to meetings and stuff. I don't go to meetings. I just live my life. And I have this incredible relationship with so many people on social media that is such a gift to me. I don't need to go over and over and over the 12 steps, for instance. I know this sounds probably very dangerous for you, but that's me. This is 42 years of no drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. No, everybody gets it a different way. Some people, they need to rely on. I mean, I see too, some people that it's like the 12 steps and meetings become their new addiction, the replacement for another addiction, and it almost keeps them from experiencing the everyday life too,
Yeah, the majority of this, you want to get laid. I mean, I know that in the very beginning, whenever I was started, in 81, that decade was so debauched, as you know. And a lot of people just went there to get laid. Absolutely. It's up to you. It goes a lot further than just this sort of like this book, Yeah. I mean, there's a library of help out there. Just have faith in yourself, love yourself enough to be loved, and you're going to be okay. Let yourself come first sometimes. It's very important. You can't keep giving everything away.
Amen. Amen. And then, so we're coming up to present, and you mentioned it a couple times, your relationship with Steven Van Zandt, and him approaching you to be a part of the Little Steven's Underground Garage show.
Yeah.
Like how did that come about, that relationship come about, and how has the transition been for you to go from frontman to actor to now, DJ talking about other people's work?
It's a wonderful, wonderful place to be. Me and Jonesy and Clem and Nigel and Tony, we opened for him, Checker Past, 80s. And I think it was, I don't remember, but that's where I met him. And I thought he was fascinating because he was so politicized. He believed in things and he wanted to do it. He did Sun City, which is one of the greatest moments ever in the political rock and roll world, where he actually, went after those people who, these racist people in South Africa. And he got everybody, Bono and everybody else to do the thing. So I really had great respect for Stevie because he's an R&B. He's like a rock and soul artist. He's a true musician. He can play guitar like a MF, and he's an amazing person. So what happened was I got an internet show about 10 years ago, and I was interviewing Marianne Williamson, who is now running for president, who I believe in a great deal. And Maureen Van Zandt, Stevie's wife, heard me doing this interview with Marianne Williamson. And Andrew Loog Oldham, who was at Little Steven's Underground Garage, you might recall Andrew Loog Oldham was the manager of the Rolling Stones in the very beginning, an amazing man himself. And he was the DJ, and he left the morning DJ at Little Steven's Underground Garage. And Maureen whispered to Stevie Van Zandt one night, "Get MDB." He's articulate, he's been around, blah, blah, blah. And that's what happened. And I got the gig, and that's 9 years ago. And I've been doing it every day, virtually, except for a couple of weeks off a year, every day. And just loving extolling the virtues of somebody else rather than myself.
Yeah. Awesome. And then, so obviously then, through that relationship, one of your first loves, music, is still a huge part of your life. You're still creating art. You're still recording music, and now it's on Steven's Wicked Cool record label.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. But I've also written a musical about the Marquis de Sade, and done many other things, paint, all of these different things have become one, I've been able to do this because I'm on the radio, but I have so much time on my hands to also do other things, which is write songs for people, and write my own songs and write this ever evolving book, which is the hardest thing in the world, to write that. But the documentary has been a real great way of letting people know who I am and that I believe in everything, that is necessary to be able to share it with the audience. It's not just plain Otis Redding. It's also, what does that mean? He died so young. We can talk about racism. We can talk about music. It's very illuminating for me to be a DJ. You're not just playing 3 minutes of music. You know what I mean? You're doing so much. You're doing because the lyrics of these incredible songs I explore. It's not like I just say, well, here comes Wilson Pickett. You know what I mean? Or the Stones or whatever, or some new band, It's about what does the song mean to you? What are you feeling, And I tell them what I'm feeling, and then they get back to me on social media. And, it's this really incredible relationship that one has with people you don't even know, you've never met. Yeah.
And then, as you were saying, about where you're at, loving yourself, and that way you can love others in the room. You could put out that love around other people.
Yeah.
In your documentary, Who Do You Want Me to Be? This was my favorite quote. I had to write it down because I really felt connected to you here too. It's like, I'd rather fuck than tell someone to fuck off.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you were inspired, and I hope it comes true every night.
Me too. But yeah, I definitely highly recommend people watch that documentary. And like you mentioned, you're trying to write a book, and I could see why it's, there's just so many different things that I got just from that documentary that could spin off into like a series of, episodes, like a docu-series or something.
Oh, I've been approached to do all of that, but that what do they call them? Reality shows. They're about as real as Trump, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I shouldn't say that, of course. But the vibe is here that I don't want to be followed around. I've been followed around by a camera my entire life. That's enough already, I want a life with my cats and my wife,
Exactly.
And just playing guitar because I love to play guitar. It's not that there's no goal. This is the goal, and I don't really I don't want people to see me naked. Yeah, maybe. They'd be so shocked, and no man would ever love me again.
Well, I mean, it's like you go back, like there's plenty out there already. I'm sure in the past you're lucky. I'm sure you're thankful, like, I mean, that I am too, that social media and cell phones didn't exist when we were really out there running around.
Yeah, I love it. I think social media is fantastic. I mean, I've, it's just interesting. It's a great way to communicate, especially during the pandemic. Really, when you play this music and you talk with a certain degree of honesty on the radio every day to 5 million people, then you're going to have an incredible relationship if you want to. If you want that. And I've just hit this positive chapter in the book of my life, and it ain't going anywhere other than get even more strength to it and belief to it and truth to it. And then when you're dealing with the truth in rock and roll and rock and soul music, it's like, I don't know, it becomes a soundtrack to a beautiful heavenly place.
Amen. Yeah. And then, one thing that I wrote down, sorry, my notes were a little scattered, but I had to mention this because watching your documentary, I was like, wow, what a hell of a, and this was obviously in your sobriety, but you had quite the ultimate Trivial Pursuit game night at your place back in the day.
Yeah.
With quite a few cast of characters there. You want to touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those people are in the documentary, Gabriel Byrne and so on and so on, Don and, Eddie Begley. Eddie Begley was the one, brilliant actor. I mean, he's a fantastic guy. And we had this game, a Trivial Pursuit, and we'd have Warren Beatty, Bob Dylan. I'm not kidding. Jonesy would be there, and Steve is brilliant. He might not be an intellectual, but he is one of the most brilliant, unself-conscious people ever. And everybody loved him because everybody loved the Pistols. Yeah. But it was a fantastic group of people. Every Friday night, me and Miss P would do it in our little house that Don had lent us. It was a fantastic, to see these people going, oh, I don't know. Oh, people that are magnificent artists suddenly go, oh God, I don't know. I've forgotten. I can't remember, to see them being human.
Yeah.
Was delightful. And because you could see the other side of it all, we get so caught up in the perfect shot and the perfect makeup and the perfect outfit and the gun and the thing and the romance of theater and cinema. But no, this time you're sitting on a couch next to Bob Dylan and somebody you've never even heard of. And, we're collectively becoming human again.
Yeah, I thought that was beautiful as well. That's what I tried to do, with some of my questioning when I do this podcast, because like, I get a lot of musicians on here. I also speak with a lot of veterans.
Yeah.
And, especially when you do work with the labels and the musicians, like, all right, make sure you talk about the album release and make sure you talk about the tour and make sure you talk. And that's fine. I hit those bullet points, but I also like to pull the curtain back and see the human side. Like, what kind of struggles have you overcome? That's why I try and be an open book myself to help my guests feel comfortable.
God bless you, man. I absolutely think that's terrific. And God bless you for doing that, because we need more of you like that to get to the humanity of somebody rather than the achievements. Fuck the achievements, it's who you are right now. That's the only thing that really matters. And therefore, if you're in the moment right now, you can really be truthful, because you'll toss something out like Alf and I can respond to it. It just is, my life has been show business, sorry. I do apologize, but that's what it's been. So I'm not going to pretend to be something else, am I? And you're telling the truth. You're asking the truth, which is even more interesting. You're asking your guests to tell the fucking truth, and not make it up. Make themselves into this glorious, messiah of show business. Get out of here.
Yeah, and what I know for myself, being a music fan, a fan of movies and entertainment and stuff like that, what draws me into the people, the actors or the musicians more, is to know their human side, their vulnerability. That helps me get behind them even more.
Yes, because they're not pretending to be something. That's the terrible thing about filters.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, your filter's on the phone, and you suddenly your 80-year-old grandmother looks like,
Like
I don't know.
you'd hit it.
Look, it's so stupid. It's so ludicrous. That filters make me laugh.
Oh, I
Filters
know.
are the funniest thing because, I don't want to name names though, because it's interesting when you get a famous person who's famous simply because they've got a fantastic ass.
Yeah.
And then the filter makes it even more fantastic, which puts it into a whole other world, or a singer that is, now shall we say 50 or 60, which I think is so gorgeous. When you see people at a certain age, it's beautiful to see that they're still youthful and they're still singing and they're still powerful and still acting and so on and so forth. And they have to put this fucking filter over their faces. And I go, oh my God, this world is falling apart. We're a bunch of AI robots.
Yeah. AI Botox,
AI Botox.
But
That's my new band. It's my new band. We're gonna be huge. Very
all right,
excited.
I better get guest list for life then when you guys go tour.
Yeah. So I think we've done a pretty good interview here, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself. And I've certainly enjoyed myself, my friend. And I wish you all the luck in the world. You deserve it.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Real quick before we get ready and wrap up, can I ask you a couple questions I normally ask guests I have on?
Yeah, sure.
Last book that you've read?
Oh, the last book I read was Dylan's book, The Philosophy of Modern Song. I don't know if anybody's read that, but it is unbelievable. It's Bob Dylan's breakdown of his favorite songs.
Nice. And then who are 3 people who've inspired you or you can credit for making you the person you are today?
Jesus, Elvis, and Iggy Pop.
Nice. It's like the Holy Trinity right there. Amazing. And then any causes or organizations that you support and encourage others to check out?
Narcissism. Look at you. It's total silence. No, man, everything, everyone, everybody. I don't have any beliefs, that I can spit out at you and tell you, I'm a Christian. I'm gay and I'm proud of it. All this, I don't know. I just live in the moment, and that's my criteria, is being here now with you talking.
Awesome. And then any message you have for the military members currently serving?
Yes, thank you so fucking much. Are you kidding me? You bet I do. I'm a huge supporter of guys and women and everybody in between who go out there and for our country. And I am from the United States. I've been here since 1972. I believe in our brave soldiers out there. Of course I do. I bleed when I see what goes on, man. And yesterday I did a whole thing on, in the 60s, young men and women coming back from Vietnam and realizing what was happening in this world, and completely ignored, by the powers that be. And I just went mad about that. It just hit me so hardcore, that you guys go out there to save our lives and then you come back and you're treated like that.
Yeah.
That is a disgrace, a political disgrace. And so, I have a great sense of our country being looked after, by young men and women, and not getting the props, all the money, that they deserve.
They have all this money to train us up to go off to war, but
that's
seems
right.
Like there's nothing there to fix us when we come back.
That's it in a nutshell. You've trained, you pay, all this money goes into protecting the powers that be.
Yeah,
it's not the populace that they're protecting. And then you guys come back and you can't get a job, and you don't have, you lost a leg. Come on, man. That's barbaric. Michael Day barbaric. That's not cool at all. No way. And I'm very into that. And I have a lot of friends here in the military.
Wow. Well, Michael, man, I really appreciate you know, this conversation and getting to interact with you for this moment that we've just enjoyed together. For people in the audience that are curious and want to know more, we've already pitched the documentary, but if they want to listen to you on Sirius or they want to follow what you're up to, where would you send them?
Sirius XM Channel 21, I'm on every day, and I would love you to be with me, and mdbundergroundgarage.com is my email. If you want to talk to me or send me songs or whatever it is, you can get hold of me, and I will respond on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all of that. I love it. It's important for me to stay, part of who I can relate to, so then I don't feel sort of like trapped and alone, which a lot of people who, I go out there and people go, hey, Murdoc, and all of that. And it's kind of like, it's jarring in a way. So, I'm just like everybody else. I just want to be in love. And I want to do the right thing. And the right thing, ladies and gentlemen, is telling the truth, loving yourself enough to be loved. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for your time once again. And if I could ask one last favor before I let you go, would you mind cutting a promo ID for my show? Just introduce yourself, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is Michael DeBar, and I would advise you very much to listen to Boondoggle Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. It's been great.
Pleasure, my brother. My pleasure. I've had a great time.
Yeah, and I'll be one of those people to hit you up on social media.
Sure. Sure. I'd be delighted. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it tremendously.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.